Tyrone Morris is Client Managing Director for the Xerox Corporation. Xerox is the world's leading enterprise for business process and document management, offering global services. Tyrone is responsible for the strategy, relationship, business development, and profitable revenue growth for one of Xerox's top 10 global customers. Previously, Tyrone was Senior Vice President and Country Manager for Siemens Nixdorf in the Philippines.
So, Tyrone, welcome. We hear a lot about the importance of developing a good partnership, and we hear a lot about companies talking about value, the ability to deliver measurable value. But your view is that these two things have to be brought together.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I think today, as we notice that everything is becoming a commodity, even those things that cannot be a commodity are being put into that category. Right. And so as you try and provide value, if you don't have a partnership, you will find yourself in an Excel spreadsheet in one of the rows or one of the columns. And so I think as you focus, again, in the relationships and try and build credibility and create a partnership, you'll find that your value will be more appreciated and that will be understood and, in fact, supported. And that is an absolute conviction that I have.
That's right. And talk a bit about the partnership and how that works with the key account.
Well, I think it's focus. Everything is focus. Everything is relationships. Right. So I think the more you understand the customer, you understand the individual, what drives this person, where their interests are, what will help them solve their problems, giving them more answers than questions, I think we'll find that you slide across into the category of being a partner. And I know in many examples I've seen people have resisted talking about partnerships and win-win, and they give me the deal. But I think even if they don't use that word, as you tick off that list that I've just been through, create credibility, trust, recognize what's driving them, understand their pressures, their challenges, giving them answers and not questions, I think you suddenly will get those points. And I find that it's far easier then to provide the value of far more than what has been asked for. Right. And even at far larger wallet size of option, that you can provide that and get them to sponsor that and get that actually as a solution or as a solution for the deal, get that supported and bought by them.
And you differentiate between understanding the customer and understanding the people as individuals.
Yes, so absolutely. I think there are two things. So the individual that you're dealing with, you need to understand this individual has challenges, has a target, has something to solve, but this person's also in a total network of dependencies within his own or her own organization. Right. So there are the stakeholders, and I have to do this because I don't do this, my boss won't, or that person in this division won't support it if this. So there are a number of things as you seek for the puzzle pieces, you need to identify and somehow get this person and then the customer's needs satisfied in total. So yes, absolutely both of those.
Okay, good. Yeah. Can you give us perhaps a live example of how this actually works in practice?
I have a very one of my favorite little stories is really a large deal that I signed a number of years back. And we had this customer come in and they had a simple request. They wanted some numbers in a spreadsheet column. They wanted us to bid on a certain part of the business. It happened to be in document output, so they wanted something printed. And we listened to the requirements and said, well, I understand that's what you want. Now, lesson number one is always listen to the customer. So the customer wanted something printed and wanted a quote. And again, to put something in a spreadsheet and compare the best price and the best deal. And we tried to dig down and understand what was driving this change, what was causing this requirement to be articulated. And it was across 4 or 5 countries. It was in Asia, it was in the US, in Brazil, and a number of countries in Europe. And they had this requirement, and somebody in the central office was trying to coordinate this. So we knew that the requirement had to be far more complicated and complex than what was being asked for. And so we, again, try to understand what was driving this person, who else was involved, what were the pressures of the company, how are they going about this? Do they think that if they solved the best price on this particular day, that their problem would be solved? And soon after having fed this person with a number of complicated questions and answers, we led him down the path to understand that we absolutely could solve a far larger, complex challenge that they had, and one that they hadn't recognized, to be honest.
Right.
So we had really consulted, we understood their business, we understood their global business, and we recognized we know how to put a solution to the situation. And that was probably another 2 to 3 weeks of intensive engagement with this individual, and then he was kind enough to nominate some other people in his network. And so we expanded our depth into the company and understood what was driving the different individuals and how far they would go to commit to a solution. And before long, I think I put a team of 3 or 4 people in a dedicated way on this team. We gave the customer unbelievable support and understanding, and delivered him things that he hadn't even asked for. We got their stakeholders excited. And before we know it, we put a business case together and with the team, before they knew it, and we put this business case together and said, look, the printing, the document output was one thing that you were asking for, but we understand the complexity of the process. Right. And we gave them a solution across all the elements of the process, from the editorial, the linguistics, localization, the printing, and the logistics to the final delivery of the product to their production line globally. And we offered them a central program office to manage this. And suddenly they had solutions that they hadn't envisaged before. There was nobody to compare our bid with. The customer was, again, if I come back to our 2 entry points of partnership, and then the whole aspect of giving the right solution and providing them this value, they immediately started helping us provide us with information that under normal circumstances they might not have done. And in a second way, we were giving them value that was, again, far beyond what they had ever expected. And a final presentation we had to their board, because it was a very mission critical and a supply chain critical process in their whole business. And if, in simple terms, if the user guides for the mobile phones was 3 days late, you can imagine many providers would have gone completely insane, especially if one of the new products came out. Right. And we gave them a very comprehensive solution. And again, if I look and say the value was there far beyond what they ever discovered. And in the meantime, the way we navigated through their organization, got the different stakeholders involved, there was clearly a feeling of this team are there to understand us. They're there to help us. Right. They're there to provide value, find solutions, and beyond borders that they could actually see, because we were also crossing silos. Right. So we crossed, there was somebody in supply chain that had, in fact, her vision of how things should be solved. And then there was somebody in logistics and somebody in engineering. And so in each silo, they had restricted vision beyond the silos, and we were providing them this transparency. And clearly at the end, I remember one of their senior board members, when he signed the contract, and it was a very large contract over 5 years. And he really just complimented our team, which was quite brilliant, to say, we find a way of working with you that you've identified what we need before we know it ourselves, right, at a value that seems to be very competitive, and you've identified all of our key success factors in providing such a change, making such a change. And it was a very good success story.
And you can do that because you're not simply taking what's on the piece of paper as that's it. You're understanding why that's on the, and you're challenging it, and you're really getting. You probably end up knowing more about the customer from a holistic point of view than the various departmental heads you talked about.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And again, the person who only had that vision of the one row in the spreadsheet, that of course we had to satisfy that need.
Right.
You can't say, oh, I have this great value, it's this expensive, and it's, it's multiple silos, and that's why it's a good solution. No. Each individual wanted to know that they could tick off their boxes.
Right.
But again, as they appreciated what we could share with them, the advantages for the whole company, it became very apparent, especially as we escalated to their management level. And we said there needs to be somebody who could take care of understanding that whatever you're all doing fits into the puzzle, and that makes sense for somebody. And it was the CFO. It had to make business sense. We had to show them that there was an appreciative value. We had to show them, in fact, their head of production, that there were no risks involved with such a transition across many continents. And maybe, I think we replaced about 15 suppliers that had tiny little bits of the supply chain and of the value chain by a single solution. So they were very happy in many ways, because the one throat choke to throat, one throat to choke. They were very happy that they could deal with one company to solve everything. But their replacement and the advantages over, I think, let's say it was 10 suppliers. I think it was more. But the single touch points for each supplier, separate contracts and T's and C's for each supplier, different escalation processes, different plug-ins for the whole supply chain process. And they were very, very happy to say, if we could replace this all with one single interface. And then they started understanding the value.
Right.
But again, I emphasize, they could only understand that value once we had created that trust, once the partnership aspect, the relationship was there. Then I think they were very happy to move on and look at something different.
Right.
And the good news is that the contract was signed. In fact, it was extended after the 5 years for a further 4 years. And we expanded and replicated that in many areas. So it works pretty well.